of the national anthem, while the second standard will be recited as the opening prayer. We love and strength and faith. Jesus past shall never be in vain. To serve with all our might, one nation bound in freedom, peace and unity. We'll take the second stanzas of the national anthem. We'll recite it as the opening prayer for this event. O God of creation, direct our noble cause, guide our leaders right, help our youth the truth to know, in love and honesty to grow, and living just and truth, great lofty heights attain, to build a nation where peace and justice shall reign. Amen. Thank you very much. Please, for those physically here, be seated. I'd like to recognize all our distinguished and special guests that are hooked up with us on the virtual conference. I'd like to start by setting the protocol for this event. Our distinguished guest of honor is Excellency, the Executive Governor of Kebbi State, Senator Abubakar Atiku Bagudu, the chairman of this occasion and chairman in council, president of the Nigerian Society of Engineers, Engineer Babagana Muhammad, a fellow of the Nigerian Society of Engineers, the president, Association of Professional Women Engineers of Nigeria, Engineer Fumilola Ojenade, a fellow of the Nigerian Society of Engineers, our special guest of honor, President, Council of Regulation of Engineers in Nigeria, Engineer A.A. Rabiu, a fellow of the Nigerian Society of Engineers. Our founder members, the 6 courageous women that established the association called APWEN today, past presidents of our great association, National Executive Council members, fellows of the Nigerian Society of Engineers and the Association of Professional Women Engineers of Nigeria, our panelists in no particular order, Eng Trudy Morgan, President, Sierra Leone Institution of Engineers. Engineer Professor Peter Owalu, a Fellow of Nigerian Society of Engineers, Director of Academics, African University of Science and Technology, Abuja. Mrs. Onyechi Tifasa, MD, CEO, Siemens Nigeria. Engineer Adeze Ugogelaya, PEPMP, Senior Engineer, South Jersey Industries, United States of America. APWEN Chapter Chairman, NSC Chapter and Division Chairman, gentlemen and women of the press, ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome to the Association of Professional Women Engineers National Virtual Conference and Annual General Meeting. As we progress during this event, we will take recognition of everyone that has joined us on the virtual meeting via Zoom and recognize them appropriately. On that note, I'd like to welcome us all once again to this event. And in presence, we have I would like to welcome us to this event. We'll start with the President's welcome address, and this will be taken by Engineer Fumilola Ojelade, a Fellow of the Nigerian Society of Engineers. You're welcome.
Our distinguished guest of honor, His Excellency, the Executive Governor of Kebbi State, Senator Abubakar Atiku Bagudu, the chairman of this occasion, and chairman in council of the Nigerian Society of Engineers, the president of the NSC, Engineer Babagana Mohammed, FNSC, ably represented by Engineer Ayo Fanimokun, FNSC. Our special guest of honor, the president for the Council of Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria, Engineer Ali Rabiu, FNSC, founders of APWEN here present, past presidents of APWEN, National Executive Committee members, fellows of NSC and APWEN, the chairman of NSC Victoria Island Branch, Engineer John Audu, a fellow of the Nigerian Society of Engineers, APWEN chapter chairman, NSC and APWEN members, gentlemen and women of the press, ladies and gentlemen. Great honor and pleasure that I welcome you all to this event this morning. Which is the opening ceremony of our conference. This year's conference is a 4-day event, and it starts today, the 22nd September 2020, and it ends on Friday, 25th September 2020. It is the first ever virtual conference by any engineering body in Nigeria. And this is not surprising because APWEN, which is a special division of the Nigerian Society of Engineers, has always been a pace setter among all the 25 divisions of the NSC. Originally planned as a physical event to be held in Abuja, this event is now being held virtually to avoid a large gathering and help prevent the spread of COVID-19. This 4-day event is an expression of the life-impacting culture of APWEN. The theme of the conference is the dynamics of engineering education for sustainable development. The conference will be declared open by our our distinguished guest of honor, who is the Executive Governor of Kebbi State, Senator Abubakar Atiku Magudu. He will also be giving the keynote address in a while. And this opening ceremony is a hybrid event, meaning that we have this physical event that you are watching, and so many others have joined us on Zoom. After the opening ceremony, immediately after, there's going to be a panel discussion titled Engineering Education in COVID-19 Era. And this will be a full virtual event. As we all know, COVID-19 has redefined the way we do a lot of things. In many cases, it has taught us a new way of doing things. Engineering education is one that requires the students to carry out physical activities in laboratories, workshops, and the likes. How can the knowledge of this experience be impacted in an era of lockdown or physical distancing? That is what we are going to be seeing today. Have we developed a new way of doing this? The discussants will do justice today to this topic. And to do this discussion, we have leading engineers from both the industry and the academia. We have the president of the Sierra Leone Institution of Engineers, Engineer Trudy Morgan. We have the MD, CEO of Siemens Nigeria, Ms. Onyeche Tifashe. The Director of Academics of the African University of Science and Technology, Engineer Professor Peter Onwalu, Fellow of the Society. He used to be Research and Development Council. Also a senior engineer at South Jersey Industries, USA, Ms. Adeze. She will be part of the discussants. Tomorrow, 23rd, which is Wednesday, which is day 2 of the conference, we are going to have technical presentations. Technical papers will be delivered on the sub-themes of our conference. The sub-themes that we have chosen are in engineering policies, renewable energy technology, waste management, strategic leadership and entrepreneurship, sustainable materials processing, modeling and simulation of engineering design, as well as sustainable production systems. Experts in these fields will present papers on those topics. It is a fully virtual event. It will have 4 sessions running concurrently, and we encourage members to subscribe to this conference and join us. Also, tomorrow by noon, there will be a virtual industrial visit to Jaguar Land Rover assembly plant in Haywood, Liverpool, in the United Kingdom. We will see how this high-end product is assembled. We will also be able to appreciate their work and compare it to the way we do vehicle assembly here. We know that here in Nigeria, we have Costaris and Innocent who assemble vehicles in Nigeria. And this is the advantage of our virtual event, this virtual mode of the conference, because we can be anywhere in the world to participate. Our tour guide for the virtual industrial visits will be Engineer Ismail Balogun, founder of Balbos UK Limited and the UK automotive engineering solutions provider. He's Nigerian, but he lives in the United Kingdom. On Thursday, the 24th September, we'll have our flagship program, the Town and Gown Mentoring and Capacity Development Program for Young Engineers. Essentially, this program is a bridge between the academia and the industry. Young engineers in this balance refers to undergraduates in their 3rd year in their 4th year in the university, up to 3 years post-graduation. We have invited various multinationals who employ engineers as our mentor partners for this program. They will be speaking to the group of young engineers that have indicated interest in their respective industries. The companies invited include Siemens Nigeria, Construction Kaiser, Tranos, an engineering manufacturing company, Baker Hughes, Chevron Nigeria Limited, Guinness, Nigerian Bottling Company, Shell Companies in Nigeria, CADWorks, and Delta Freak. All participating companies will receive our mentor partner badge. The Turn and Gun program is sponsored by Woli Foundation, an Australian organization, and a joint venture partner with Delta Afrique. We had the first edition of the Town and Gown in June, targeting young engineers from the Southwest Zone. This one is targeting young engineers from North Central Nigeria. So we have invited His Excellency, the Executive Governor of Nasarawa State, Engineer Abdullahi Sule, FNSC, to declare that open on Thursday. And our keynote speaker will be Miles O'Connor, who is the General Manager of Wali Academy headquarters in Saudi Arabia. And this edition also will be completely virtual, but going after the COVID ends, we'll be having the physical ones. Apart from mentoring sessions, the Town and Gown also involves executing projects that can help young engineers obtain skills to become self-employed. Later this year, since the lockdown is now eased, we're going to be executing those projects. One of it is a training on 3D printing. Another is a training on Cisco. And finally, on the 25th of September, which is Friday, we'll be having our annual general meeting, which is for APWEN members only. I welcome you once again to this event. I implore you to please relax as we go into the panel session after our distinguished guest of honor have spoken. Thank you.
Thank you very much, the President, Association of Professional Women Engineers of Nigeria, Engineer Fumilola Ojelade, FNSC, for giving us not just a window, but a door into what the entire event would be. Thank you very much for that opening remark. And I want to believe that for every day and every session of this event, we would learn. It will add value to each and every participant. I'd like to recognize past presidents. There are past presidents of our association that connected even before the meeting started. I'd like to start with the chairman planning committee of this conference, Engineer Ini Usoro, FNSC. In no particular order, I'd like to recognize Engineer Dr. Patricia Okpene Odili, FNSC. She's also a past president of this association. I'll go straight to the next item on the agenda. For those that are wondering what is APWEN all about, in a brief, I would like to tell you that about 38 years ago, some women just believed, and it wasn't a belief, they followed through, and that's why we're here today, that women representation in engineering needs to be promoted. Women needs to be involved more. Women needs to involve more in STEM. Women needs to involve more in engineering activities. I'd like to tell you that we are still working towards that goal, and we believe that we've achieved some and we'll keep working towards it. I'd like to call on the president, who is the chairman of this occasion, Engineer Babagana Muhammad, FNSC, who is ably represented here by Engineer Ayo Fanimoku, FNSC, past chairman of Ikeja branch, past national chairman of a division, Naimeki. You're welcome, sir.
The president of APWEN, allow me to stand by the protocol established. First and foremost, I want to bring the good tidings from the president and chairman in council of Nigerian Society of Engineers, Engineer Babagana Mohammed, FNSC, who until very early of this morning thought that he would be here to be with you. It was late, it was earlier this morning that he had to call me that, okay, that I have to be here to represent him because of some other pressing matters. I will read a speech. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I am elated to witness the 2020 National Conference of the Association of Professional Women Engineers of Nigeria, APWEN. First, let me profoundly thank the leadership and the entire members of APWEN for the honor conferred on me by the award of scholarship to our school girls to study sciences and ultimately engineering in the university. The ceremony, which held on Saturday, September 19, 2020 in Maiduguri, was quite unique and significant against the backdrop of the desire by many parents in the Northeast towards supporting their children's educational pursuit. Since its inception, APWEN has continually promoted engineering career amongst our school girls. The robust partnership with various organizations in training of our upcoming women engineers is highly appreciated. I am also quite elated that APWEN, being a division of the Nigerian Society of Engineers, has continued to display great commitment to the ideals of the society. Your consistency in the organizing pungent capacity programs such as these will no doubt move the division to the desirable altitude in the drive for the growth of engineering. Let me emphasize here that our divisions must continue to tailor their programs in a manner that will promote knowledge enrichment for us to continue to distinguish in all of our endeavors. On September 24, 2019, you held your national conference with the theme, The Dynamics of Environmental Change, Impact of Engineering. That conference was held in Asaba, Delta State. The topic for discussion here today being the dynamics of engineering education for sustainable economic development is absolutely in line with the tone of the moment. The Nigerian Society of Engineers has at various fora noted the relevance of engineering education to the speedy industrialization of our country. We are witnesses to the fact that many countries that were referred to as third world countries years back, like India, Korea Republic, and China, have now become economically buoyant, essentially because of quality engineering education. The evolution of good policies combined with deliberate steps towards strengthening their engineering capabilities. As part of our advocacies, we will continue to engage our policymakers and stakeholders with the view of creating the appropriate environment for engineering activities to thrive unhindered. We must continue this kind of engagements. While thanking you for your attendance and participation, I hereby wish you all an intellectually rewarding conference. Thank you. That was a speech by Engineer Magana Mohammed, the President and Chairman in Council of the Nigerian Society of Engineers.
Thank you very much, sir, for the opening remark of this event. So having you here, apparently, we know that the President here 100% from the speech, which has shown support and commitment into what we're going to be doing during this conference. Thank you very much for that succinct delivery. I'd like to also crave your indulgence, sir, to declare this conference open. This conference originally should have been declared open by guest of honor, the Executive Governor of Kebbi State, His Excellency Senator Abubakar Atiku Bagudu. But he had to move into another meeting that he already had scheduled. He would join us before the close of this program. On that note, as the chairman of this conference, Please, sir.
To the glory of God, on behalf of the President and Chairman in Council of Nigerian Society of Engineers, Engineer Babagana Mohammed, FNSC, I hereby declare this conference open.
Thank you very much. For those physically present, you can put your hands together. And for those online, please use your virtual applause. The conference is hereby declared open. Thank you very much, sir. I'd also like to recognize Engineer Valerie Agberagba, 9th President of APWEN, Engineer Olayinka Abdul of Nigerian Society of Engineers, 12th President of APWEN, Engineer Awaz Sadiq Mohammed, 14th President of APWEN, Engineer Uju Okusogu, FNSC, founding member, Engineer Dr. Francisca Uafulugo, Rector, Federal Polytechnic, Oko, our pioneer president of Association of Professional Women Engineers of Nigeria, Engineer Olutumbi Johanna Maduka, FNSC. You're welcome, ma. I'd like to call on the current president, Engineer Alima Suya Rabiu, FNSC, FASC, Singari Lafia, who is ably represented by Engineer Yakub, FNSC. He would be taking his goodwill message on behalf of the current president.
Yeah, good morning, distinguished engineers. The president
Kindly
of the
unmute
association.
yourself, Engineer Yakub.
Yes, I have done that. I have done that. Hello, can you hear me? I have done that. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
Yes. The president of the Association of Professional Women Engineers in Nigeria, APWEN, Engineer Fumilola Ojelade, distinguished ESCO members of the Association of Professional Women Engineers, past president of the Association of Professional Women Engineers, the president of the Nigerian Society of Engineers, ably represented by our own engineer Fani Mokun. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I bring to you warm felicitation from the President of the Council for the Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria, Koren. I have no prepared speech, but the President has asked me to inform the professional women engineers that Koren is always behind you. Koren will always support the activities of professional women engineers, particularly as regard to their professional development as it relates to their various disciplines. He also told me to inform you that professional women engineers should endeavor to pay their practicing fees and obtain their practicing license annually, as that is what will keep the professional body going. He would have been there physically himself. Unfortunately, due to other engagements, he could not make it. In fact, as at the time he informed me to represent him, even myself, it was already late, around 7 p.m. yesterday. I would have made effort to come physically to represent him. Unfortunately, as at that time, it was late for me to start booking for flight to Lagos. On that note, we wish you fruitful deliberation, and we will be with you throughout this conference. We'll be linking up making contributions where necessary, and also tapping from the resources that you bring forth. The topic of this year's, the theme of this year's conference is apt, and we believe it is going to impact more knowledge on not only the professional women engineers, but the engineering in Nigeria as a whole and the Nigeria as a country. Thank you very much. We wish you fruitful deliberation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome. Thank
Engineer
you.
Yakub Ali Garba, FNSC, representing the President of the Council of Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria, for that speech and
Thank you.
goodwill message. We
Thank
know
you.
that in all our engineers, we have the love that APWEN deserves and needs from every one of you. Thank you for
Thank
that
you.
words of encouragement.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I'd like to call on the pioneer president of Association of Professional Women Engineers of Nigeria, Engineer Olutumbi Johanna Maduka, FNSC, as she gives a goodwill message. And after that, we'll go to the vote of thanks, then break out for the panel discussion session. Please, can you unmute her?
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I would like to say a special welcome. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you clearly.
Okay. I would like to say a special welcome to Trudy Morgan. I hope she's there and she's hearing me all the way from Sierra Leone. We met at a meeting before, if she remembers, Royal Academy of Engineering in Kigali about 2 years ago. I think it's 2 years ago. So I would like to say a special welcome to Trudy for being part of this conference. I'm always delighted to be involved in activities of APWEN, so it doesn't matter what else I have. I knew I was going to join this conference. And all the themes are very good as usual. I intend to be part of it for most of the time. I would like to congratulate our President, Funlola. She's been very active. I think the last time I saw you people was in Maiduguri. So in spite of COVID, you've been very active with your team, with the executive. And this is a special commendation to you and your executive. As one of our past presidents used to say, can you please give Funlola and her team a round of applause? I think they deserve it. And we've been, please, can you give her a round of applause? Now, we've been fortunate. We've had so many new branches. We've had new chairmen. We've had so many women joining APWEN that really, I think we all deserve an applause. And then we have so many activities going, including the Royal Academy activity in STEM. Idiot, one of our past presidents, who's handling the diversity projects and so many others. So it's a lot of work that we put on ourselves. At this stage, I'm afraid I can't be too useful to you, but I will always give my support whenever it is necessary. Please enjoy this conference in spite of COVID, and whenever you are going out, please keep safe so that we can always enjoy each other's company. Have a blessed week, and God bless. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ma. for that goodwill message. As a founding member, she has been very, very active. It's obvious, and we need not to say more, having her connect on the first day of the conference. Thank you very much for that tenacity and consistency that you've shown us. For those that do not know, I won't tell you her age, but you can Google it. Use Google to know how old Mama is. Thank you very much, Ma. We appreciate you. I'd like to take a toll from your goodwill message. I'm in no capacity to give a feedback to my president, but during COVID, she virtually birthed 2 other new chapters around different geopolitical zones in Nigeria. Isn't that commendable? Well, Ma. I'd also like to recognize some other personalities. Engineer Margaret Oguntala, FNSC, a 2-time Vice President, Nigerian Society of Engineers. Our second president of the Association of Women Engineers of Nigeria, Engineer Nkechi Isigwe, FNSC. Founding member, Engineer Uwankaego Monica Ojuku, FNSC. Engineer John Audu, FNSC, the chairman of Island Branch. You're here present physically, recognize your support. Engineer Elizabeth Oricha, we recognize you. On that note, I would like to call on the Chairman Conference Planning Committee as she takes the vote of thanks. Our Chairman Planning Committee is Engineer Ini Usoro, the 11th President of APWEN. Please unmute her as she takes the vote of thanks. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Standing on established protocols, I say a big thank you to you all who have found time to grace this occasion. APWEN 2020 conference has been declared open, and I encourage all of us to participate fully. It will be an insightful and engaging experience. APWEN remains indebted to you all. Long live APWEN, long live NSC, long live Nigeria. God bless us all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ma. We'll take, with the approval of the president, we'll take 5 minutes break, then we'll go into the panel session, panel discussion. Even though we're online, we need to observe safety rules. Please take a good break, take your eyes off your screen. If you need to stand up where you're seated, please do that. Take 5 minutes ego break. Please do not disconnect. In 5 minutes, we'll go into the panel session. Thank you.
place by charging for road use on a fee-for-service basis. It has also been suggested that roads be managed like a business, where investors are encouraged to build, operate toll, and maintain roads over a period of time. This will reduce the burden on government and on the long run. No matter the source of funding, FEMA is committed to efficiency, transparency, and the evolution of our road network, all in a bid to enhance the economic well-being and interest of Nigerians.
We have what is estimated at this point to be about 7 or 8 trillion naira as the total asset value of the roads and bridges across the country. That is a huge asset base. And the first thing about maintaining your asset is that you give it adequate maintenance across the period of its life.
Maintenance repair works of the internal access roads within Federal Medical Center Idiaba, Abeokuta, Ogun State, is being carried out by the Direct Labor Unit of the Federal Roads Maintenance Agency.
We invited the farmer to come and see Federal Road Maintenance Agency. They came and they realized that yes, we need to tar all these roads.
You can send us your questions and comments to any of our online platforms, Twitter
That is a huge
at
asset base.
FedRoadsNGR, email The Federal Roads Maintenance Agency was established to ensure timely and effective maintenance of the nation's federal road network. In this informative and educational
Thank you very much. I'm sure we've enjoyed our ego break. Did anyone make a fresh cup of tea? We'll go to the breakouts for panel discussion. And we have a capable hand that will be moderating this session. He is a member of our association. I'd like to read the citation of our moderator for the panel session. Engineer Yetunde Aladeitan, MNSC, holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Chemical Engineering from Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife, and a Master's of Science degree in Oil and Gas Engineering from the Robert Gordon University, Aberdeen, Scotland in 2004. She worked with Amazon Energy, an oil and gas servicing firm in Lagos, as a process engineer briefly, and she is currently a lecturer at the Chemical Engineering Department of University of Abuja. Engineer Yetunde is currently rounding up her PhD in Petroleum Engineering from the African University of Science and Technology, Abuja. She is a corporate member of the Nigerian Society of Engineers, a registered engineer with Corin, and a member of Association of Professional Women Engineers of Nigeria. I welcome Engineer Yetunde Aladeitan, MNSC, as she moderates the panel session. She takes over from here. I sincerely believe that this session will waft adequate knowledge for us as we partake in it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, our able host. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Kindly permit me to align with the already well-established protocol. You're all welcome to this panel session themed Engineering Education in COVID-19 Era. As the host has mentioned, my name is Engineer Yetunde Aladeitan, your moderator for today's panel session. Engineering education is the activity of teaching knowledge and principles to the professional practice of engineering. Since the outbreak of the COVID-19, all facets of life has in one way or the other been disrupted, education inclusive. In the early stage of the pandemic, most education facilities were on lockdown, while some with the requisite facilities transited easily to virtual learning. Although this may have its own peculiar challenges, nevertheless, it is without doubt that with the outbreak of COVID-19, the world is experiencing a new normal. In light of this, it has become imperative to examine engineering education in this period of COVID-19. To discuss this very important subject, I'm delighted to inform you that we have a panel of erudite scholars and practitioners to help us navigate this crucial issue. First up, excuse me. First up, we have Engineer Trudy Morgan, FICE, FSLIE, MBA, CEng. A chartered engineer with an MBA from Cranfield University. Trudy has combined logic and analytical skills from her engineering background with business management, commercial, and team leadership to provide a financial and strategic capability that is relevant to today's ever-changing business environment. She has worked in the construction, education, and transportation sectors and has recently been involved in delivering project management expertise to private and public sector clients. Engineer Trudy Morgan is the president of the Sierra Leone Institution of Engineers, council member of the Professional Engineers Registration Council, and president of the Sierra Leonean Women Engineers. Engineer Trudy made history by becoming the first female from Africa Fellow of the UK Institution of Civil Engineers. In June 2020, she became the first female president of the Sierra Leone Institution of Engineers in its 50-year anniversary. Second up, we have another distinguished panelist. Her name is Mrs. Onyeche Tifashe. Onyeche Tifashe is a professional engineer with extensive experience in the power and consulting industries. She graduated with a degree in electrical electronics engineering from the University of Nottingham and completed her master's degree in electrical engineering from the University of Cambridge. She started her career with Siemens in 2001 as an electrical engineer in power distribution, the vision of Siemens PLC UK, and therefore progressed up the ranks, taking up other key roles in Siemens Germany and Siemens USA. Onyeche worked with Accenture Nigeria from 2006 in the area of management consulting, and in 2009 returned to Siemens as Deputy General Manager, Medium Voltage and Transformers for Siemens Limited Nigeria. Onyeche's career path and achievements over the years led her to become the first Nigerian Managing Director, CEO of Siemens Nigeria, effective November 1st, 2014. We also have another distinguished panelist, Engineer Professor Azikiwe Peter Onwalu, FNSC. Engineer Professor Azikiwe Onwalu obtained his BEng degree and MN degree in agricultural engineering from the University of Nsukka, the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, UNN, and a PhD degree in agricultural engineering from the Technical University of Nova Scotia, Halifax, Canada. Professor Onwalu started his career as a graduate assistant in agricultural engineering in 1983 at UNN and rose through the ranks of professor in 1999. He was Director, Engineering Infrastructure, National Agency for Science and Engineering Infrastructure, NESENI, Abuja, 2003 to 2005, and DG, Raw Materials Research and Development Council, RMRDC. He's currently the head, Material Science and Engineering Program, African University of Science and Technology, AUST, Abuja, where he's also Director, Academic Planning. He's a fellow of the Nigerian Society of Engineers and Nigerian Academy of Engineering, Nigerian Institute of Management, and Nigerian Academy of Science. We also have another distinguished panelist in our midst. Her name is Engineer Adeze Udogalaya, PEPMP. Engineer Adeze holds a Master's of Science in Natural Gas Engineering and Management from University of Oklahoma, USA, and a Bachelor of Engineering degree from University of Nigeria, Nsukka. She's a licensed professional engineer in the United States and a project management professional. Engineer Adeze is an innovative and dynamic professional with extensive experience leading the engineering of highly complex natural gas pipelines and facilities. She has contributed to growth strategy initiatives to aggressively market and develop natural gas and related linear infrastructure projects. She's a senior engineer at South Jersey Industries, an energy services company in the United States. In her role, she is responsible for technical and project management functions, including engineering, construction management, safety, quality, and regulatory compliance. I would like to kickstart this session by calling on Engineer Adeze to give her presentation. But just a reminder, for each speaker, you each have 10 minutes for your presentation. Thank you. Engineer Adeze, please, you can have the floor. Thank you.
Hello, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
I'd like
yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Can I share my screen? Is that okay?
Yeah.
You can go ahead, please.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Adeze Udogalaya. I'm a senior engineer with South Jersey Gas in New Jersey, United States.
I'm really excited to be here this morning with this amazing group of professional engineers, and I want to thank the association for the opportunity to be a part of this conversation. I'm going to address the topic, the dynamics of engineering education for sustainable economic development, by discussing, 4 points. Number one is the need for sustainable economic development and why engineers should be involved. I'm also going to try to address some of the challenges we have with regards to sustainable economic development, and also how engineers can support sustainable development, as well as the role of engineering education in sustainable economic development. Now, the primary goal of sustainable economic development is to satisfy the needs of humans in the present in such a way that we do not compromise our natural environment and, make it impossible for future generations to meet their own needs. Sustainable economic development encourages us to conserve and enhance our natural environment by changing the ways we develop and use technology. It addresses social and environmental issues such as overpopulation, poverty and inequality, poor health, and high rates of mortality, and as well as the important part of energy efficiency and energy conservation. Primarily in industry, engineers, what we do is we solve problems. And even though, for the most part, when the conversation started out around sustainable development, engineers were not involved, we have the ability to use the skills that we have to support, progressing sustainable goals. Part of what we can do as engineers is, to assist in design and building devices and systems that meet basic human needs. We can help, mitigate problems in the environment, like cleaning up pollutions. We can increase the efficiency of our natural resources by involving ourselves in things like recycling, upcycling. We can eliminate, problems we have with our non-renewable resources, such as gas flaring, for example, and also try to substitute non-renewable resources with renewable resources as well. We can also develop infrastructure to help improve, the standard of living. For example, when we perform projects, we try not to damage the environment by the activities that we do. Now, every country has issues around sustainable economic development. However, in developing countries like ours, we have unique problems. Some of the problems we have is, the mindset that it's not possible to have economic growth without damaging the environment. There's also that desire, to have short-term profit, and there's lack of interest in being involved in, long-term investments that will support sustainable development. We lack financial resources, and even when we do have the financial resources, we have to deal with issues of corruption and misuse of those resources. Our sustainability policies are ineffective or poorly implemented, and we have an issue where there's not consistency in how these policies are being implemented. Like when we change, for example, government or whatever, there's no continuity with, projects that have already been started. Now, engineers in industry primarily, like I said, solve problems, right? So we can choose to, assist in moving or driving the sustainable goals forward by either being proactive or being reactive. And what I mean by that is by being reactive, we can kind of focus on fundamental or essential issues that we experience, such as, low food production, such as not having reliable, affordable energy, not having clean water, or dealing with effects of environmental hazards. However, we can take it a step further and, probably encourage that and be proactive, create innovative responses, think outside the box when it comes to trying to develop new concepts or solutions to sustainable economic development. And the ability of the engineer to think outside the box will depend a lot on the type of education that they receive, the quality of education, as well as the components of that education. And that brings me to my final point, which is how engineering education can support sustainable economic development. I mean, over time, professionals in industries and educators that are interested in this have been working to restructure the engineering curriculum. Their desire is to motivate engineers early in their career to support sustainable designs, production, and manufacturing. They've been creating courses that have a more holistic approach. And by that, I mean, they're not held back by the boundaries of traditional teaching methods. These courses integrate engineering with other disciplines such as management, economics, sciences, communication, business, as well as ethics and moral responsibility. Now, students in these programs tend to work with engineers in industry to solve real life problems by applying what you call a transdisciplinary approach. And part of the ways that they do that is by having properly designed internships or externships and company-sponsored design classes. Now, how can we foster a sustainable future, especially for us in our developing economy? It seems that sometimes, our sustainable goals are far-fetched, but I know that it's possible that we can achieve it. And definitely engineers are fundamental in advancing economic goals. Now, the way to advance sustainable economic development is recognizing that it's complex in nature, and that we have to have this transdisciplinary approach, which is basically where you involve, like I said before, engineers and people in other disciplines, as well as the people that are affected, like, the people that are going to use the end product, for example, and then people in other fields that are outside of engineering, government, business, and so on. And I believe strongly that engineering education for sustainable economic development will provide engineers with the skills that they need, knowledge, the values and attributes that they'll have to use to shape a sustainable future. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you very much, Engineer Adesi, for this very insightful presentation. One of the few points I got from, one of the many points I got from your presentation was when you talked about the role of engineers in sustainable economic development, which we all know that can never be overemphasized. You talked about the response to the challenges to sustainable economic development as thinking outside the box. So right now, a lot of us, we have to think outside the box because we have to be, abreast with the new normal since COVID-19 has disrupted virtually every aspect of our lives. And thank you very much for that insightful presentation. We're going to call the next person on the panel, Engineer Trudy Morgan, for her introduction. Engineer Trudy Morgan, please, for presentation.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you. Apologies, we've had a bit of an issue here. There's been a bridge collapse, so I haven't had time to prepare slides, but I do have something that I'd like to share with you, and which is engineering education in the COVID era, as per the title given to me, but using Sierra Leone as a case study. I know that most people in this conference are from Nigeria. So I thought it would be useful to give you a different perspective from where I stand and from the things that we have come across and the things that we're seeing. Excuse any noise in the background. I'm at a hospital. Anyway, so Sierra Leone was once known as the Athens of West Africa, and our history is checkered. And as many of you know, we've had numerous challenges. We had the 11-year war, an Ebola epidemic, the dissemination of our mining sector, tragic landslide, floodings on an annual basis, and now we have the global pandemic, of which we as a country are suffering. To date, we have 2,168 cases. We've had 1,650 recovered and 72 deaths. And when you look at the numbers, you think, oh my gosh, that's pretty small when you compare it to numbers in the Americas and other places. So we have a population of about 7 million. And as I said, because the numbers are low, the COVID numbers are low, we have had what I call a two-tier response to the COVID. There are those of us who are frightened, scared silly, so we go everywhere with masks, we use hand sanitizers, or we do everything that we need to do. And then the rest of mankind who don't believe that it's here and walk around and do nothing to prevent the spread of it. COVID-19 has impacted every area of our lives. No one can deny that. And in my case, it's actually changed what I eat, what I drink. I am now a big fan of the ginger garlic lemon soup. And I take that on a daily basis. It's changed how I travel. It's changed how I interact with my family and friends. And it's changed essentially the way that we live. In Sierra Leone, engineering education has not been exempt at all. And we have felt this even more so because traditionally, we were once a very academic nation with a lot of emphasis being put on academics and being the source of learning for not just Sierra Leone, but for a lot of West Africa. But now we're in a position due to the financial situation where our academic institutions are struggling. And as I said, this includes the impact of COVID on our institutions, includes everything from how we work in the institutions, how we manage the learning in institutions safely, how we manage time lost from learning, the inequalities that are being highlighted in our society as a result of the COVID virus. It's even highlighted more strongly the lack of funding that our universities and our institutions get. And the change in the economy has a ripple effect to the lives of ordinary citizens. So come back to learning and engineering learning. I'm going to talk about it using several layers. Schools and universities were shut down in April because we had our first lockdown in March, at 30th of March. And some institutions have now opened. The main engineering training institution in Sierra Leone is the University of Sierra Leone Fourbe College, who I'm sure Engineer Joanne, thank you, Maduka, will be very aware of. It closed down but is reopened and started classes in July. During the COVID-19, in order to address the issue of the virus and to continue learning, the university stated its desire to move towards virtual lectures. Unfortunately, this was not successful for various reasons. And these are things that I'm sure other countries were subject to, but in a country such as ours, with the challenges that we have, we were even more affected. So there was a move by the university to move to virtual learning. Unfortunately, not all lecturers were able to participate because they didn't have the facilities. Access to internet, simple one. Regular power, another one. Just the ability to pay for various platforms just wasn't there. And students also were affected because in as much as the university had made arrangements with various providers, internet providers and the mobile phone companies to provide internet services for students and lecturers, this didn't happen. So we have students who come from all over the country to Fourbe College, which is in the capital. And during Ebola, during the COVID-19, they all went out to the various districts. In some areas, we don't even have access to the internet because there are no masks, etc. So for the period within which the universities were shut down, we had no access to learning. Some lectures were extremely good and they used their personal resources to actually get internet lectures going for students. And so some classes were held. Others were very point blank and said that they weren't interested in doing that. They weren't going to spend their own money. Another thing which became quite popular which has started during the Ebola period, was the fact that some schools actually started to do radio classes online. So in some districts, rather, because they couldn't get to the schools, they would have teachers go to the local radio stations and there would be lessons. The lessons would be publicized early and those lessons would continue. So in the provinces where you had access to sort of localized radio stations, the engineering education continued that way. Now, one key area which my colleague, Engineer Daisy, had spoke about was the fact that I think it was Engineer Yewande actually, it was found that one key area of engineering training is a practical aspect of engineering. So under normal circumstances, the university has challenges in any case providing practical teaching to students, be they civil, laboratories, mechanical engineering, etc. And during this time frame, we've had no practicals undertaken at all, which means that although our students are back in class and they have been, there's a new timetable set, which has been reduced from a 15-week period to a 5-week period for all students to finish this second semester. The amount of work they will need to condense is actually going to be very tight, and there'll be no opportunity for practicals, laboratory practices, which means that if you had expected to undertake some fluid dynamics practicals or some civil surveying practicals in order to complete that session, you will be exempt from it, but it means that you don't have that experience. One of the things that we have that has been positive in the Sierra Leonean context is some of the innovation that has come out from our students and our lecturers. So students from the mechanical engineering, in collaboration with students from the medical school and the physics lab, created Sierra Leone's first ventilator. They call it the Leon Vent. That working ventilator has actually been tested, was presented to the Ministry of Health, and our business plan has been developed and submitted, and they're currently looking for a sponsorship and to produce and supply. So that has been one positive. I think another positive thing that has happened is that in as much as traditionally Sierra Leoneans go to university and they learn in the traditional way, sit in front of a classroom, have somebody write on the blackboard and tell you and give you their notes. More and more students have used the free courses available. And the Ministry of Education in Sierra Leone has partnered with a company called Coursera, and they have offered over 8,000 free courses to students and lecturers and literally anybody who wants to learn in the country. At the university level, there has been some conversation about whether or not we could take some of these courses, and if the students were to take certain examinations, they would then become a credit as an elective for them to pass this year and move on. But that is still under discussion, and it's something which is new for us, and we'll see how that develops. Sierra Leone has a Teaching Service Commission, and that is the agency that recruits teachers for all schools. And they have recently reported a lack of STEM teachers, and which means that right across the country, we have people who are teaching biology who may have had a diploma in, I don't know, say home economics. And they don't have teachers, so they end up teaching. So during this time, the Teaching Service Commission, because of the COVID pandemic, have had time to re-strategize, and they've invited engineers from across the country, both international and national, to brainstorm with them as to what they can do to now attract and retain teachers in STEM, and find ways of using social media platforms to teach in remote places. That conversation has started. It's only just starting, but again, it's a positive as a result of the COVID-19 virus. Another thing that they have done is they have experimented with coaching teachers on literacy and numeracy through radio-based lessons, and then having courses sent to them on their phones So it's not via the internet per se, it's via text messaging. And there's a lot, and most schools actually do a lot of work via text messaging. Again, for the theory that works. When it comes to the practical, it's not so good. Like I said, we have face-to-face teaching going on, and it's been good for the students to come back into class, because without that ongoing learning process, we found that a lot of our students started to wander away from the field, and some of them had actually dropped out, moving into business ventures, because a few months without money, depending on your socioeconomic background, means that you need to find a way to survive. I think I'll just end on saying that as the Sierra Leone Institute of Engineers, we have been working specifically with graduate engineers to prepare them for the workplace before COVID started. And during this COVID-19 pandemic, we have had to work even harder to complete our program. And that's primarily because although we have this 10-week program where we look to spend 2 weeks on soft skills, a week on project management and basic computer skills, the 6-week on-site training doesn't actually, has been challenged, sorry, I've just seen a note to myself, has been challenged because a lot of companies no longer have work. As I said, the mining sector has deteriorated very significantly, and a lot of our engineering partners no longer have the funding to undertake training. So I will just conclude by saying that as a nation, we are working to ensure that engineering as an institution, we're working with the universities to ensure that we manage how engineering education is enhanced and improved during this time. And my time is up, so I'll just say I'm open for comments and questions later. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Engineer Trudy Morgan, for your very insightful presentation. You iterated the financial challenges of engineering education in your country, which is, I mean, more or less the same with what we're experiencing here, you know, in Nigeria. You talked about access to internet, and even when they have the access, they can't even have the funding, you know. You also talked about the lack of facility, you know, power, and also the access to learning. You also iterated how you've been able to, the steps you're taking to actually bridge the gap, which is, as I've said, almost the same thing we have here. I think COVID-19 has been an eye-opener for a lot of us. It has shown us that we need to do more, you know, in our educational sector, especially in the third world, you know, countries. You also talked about the challenges they had of the lack of STEM teachers, and the positive step you're also taking, you know, harnessing the power of social media to reach out to the STEM teachers and the students in the remote areas. Thank you very much for that very interesting presentation. And so up next we have Professor Onwalu. Professor Onwalu, please can we have your presentation? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, moderator. I believe you are hearing me, otherwise draw my attention to that. I want to thank my colleagues who have laid the background for the presentations, who will probably be speaking all in the same direction. I've already been introduced. The topic of discussion is really very, very important to me, partly because of the way my trajectory has been. I started off as an academic at the University of Nigeria, as already said. But on reaching the peak, I moved over to industry. And those few years, about 10 to 15 years of moving from Naseni to Raw Material Council, where I worked a lot with industries, and then later I'm back. So I see myself as somebody who has gone, if you like, the full cycle So I think I've seen both sides, from academics to industry, and then back to academics. I must say that that has really helped me to see the flaws in our educational system, especially with engineering education. And so my teaching has completely changed. I think these are some of the lessons that we need to learn. In the brief introductory remarks that I want to make, I just want to highlight engineering as bedrock for sustainable economic development. And then I will also then highlight the challenges the country Nigeria faces with respect to development. And then I would like to highlight that these challenges of development, there are quite a number of reasons why we have those challenges, but I think that the engineering education, the challenges of engineering education are challenges, and if that is solved, that will impact on all the other challenges. Then, of course, I'll try to give one or two suggestions for solutions, whether there are solutions that will be inside the box or outside the box. But we need solutions, and then I'll conclude by taking a look at what we are doing at Africa University of Science and Technology to continue to teach engineering even with COVID. My colleagues have already talked about economic development, but I just want to underline the fact that we cannot achieve sustainable economic development if we don't address engineering issues. If you look through most countries of Africa, if I use Nigeria as an example, you find that part of the problem we have is that we have neglected what I call engineering infrastructure. And that is why our development challenges are there. Poor infrastructure. Personally, I'm planning to travel tomorrow to the east. I'm resident in Abuja, and since yesterday, when I decided that I'll travel, I've been battling with whether I should fly or go by road, and I found that whichever option I take is going to be an enormous task for me. So the infrastructure problem is there, whether you are talking of buildings, roads, air travel, water, and so on. Even the few infrastructure we have, I think part of our challenge is even maintenance. We don't maintain facilities. And so because of all these challenges, we see the symptoms in the fact that Nigeria imports almost everything, whether it is goods, whether we are talking of services, even consultancies, everything is really imported into this country. And I don't know if you share with me, but I get really, really upset and demoralized each time government agencies are commissioned, and not only government agencies, even industry. Each time there is a commissioning ceremony going on, you will see somebody who doesn't look like an African being the project manager. I mean, I have nothing against foreigners, but you see even routine things that Nigerian engineers should be able to do being done by people that are imported from elsewhere. So why do we have to through all this? Because of quite a number of reasons. The engineering sector, which by the way is the bedrock of the economy, because without a foundation, without a good engineering sector, the economy cannot function. So what are the problems? Of course, you can give more than 50 reasons, starting corruption, poor investments, poverty, all kinds of things. But if we remove all the political or socio-political problems, I think the major reason why we are not able to drive infrastructure, engineering infrastructure for economic development in this country is mainly because we have a poor engineering education system. Of course, the general education system has issues, but I think engineering education even has more issues than others. We don't have enough time to go through all the issues, but the major issue, the major reason why we have poor engineering education is that the system is not really properly planned. We end up with young graduates with no skills. And when we talk about skills, of course, the hard skills are there. You can teach engineering, but you find that we have serious deficiencies in the areas of soft skills that will enable a young engineering graduate to really perform in the field. Students are hardly exposed to industry while they are being trained, and so on and so forth. But anyway, the main reason, the main end product is that we end up with graduates that are not able to deal with the infrastructure problems, deal with all the engineering problems we have within the country. Of course, we shouldn't be just talking about problems. What are the solutions? A number of organizations, including the National University Commission, the Council for Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria, COREN, incidentally, I've been involved in this process at NUC and also at COREN, trying to take a second look at our engineering system. Currently, COREN is trying to address this problem by introducing what is called the outcome-based learning process. We're involved in trying to develop this, trying to use project-based learning to change our curriculum, the concepts of project-based learning, introducing critical thinking, introducing entrepreneurship, making sure that our curriculum is changed in such a way that we are not just teaching knowledge, but teaching how it can be used to solve problems. In doing that, of course, our systems of education for engineering must, and I emphasize must be linked to industry. We must do projects, a situation where students do projects that have no relevance to industry, acquiring knowledge without using those knowledge to solve problems. One of the things that we've been thinking about, I think this is the time to begin to look at this. I asked myself, why is it that the medical doctors are able to train doctors such that once they graduate, they're ready to hit the road to solve problems? And you find that every medical college we normally have a teaching hospital to it. When I raised this in one of the forums, somebody said, how can you have, it won't be easy to have equivalent of teaching hospitals in engineering schools. And I said, why? If you want to run an engineering school, you should be able to have an industrial park or technology park, which will function like a teaching hospital for the students and even the faculty. These are some of the solutions that we are looking at. As I conclude, having looked at all these issues and possible solutions, how are we dealing with the COVID situation? At African University of Science and Technology, when schools were shut down in February, we started thinking, what do we do? Incidentally, this is an international university with half of the population being foreign students from other African countries. And by design, most of our professors are from outside the country. And so we immediately started thinking, what do we do? One of the things we did, even before government started talking about it, was to start online lectures. It wasn't easy. My colleagues have already mentioned this. It wasn't easy to do, but I must say that we have succeeded because we've not lost any time, because all our students have been online receiving lectures. Of course, there are challenges of data and so on. One of the things we did was to run to our alumni, and they came to our aids. And so all our students received, and they are currently also receiving, because the lectures are still going on. They received data from the university through the help of our alumni to be able to log on to lectures. And we use different platforms, Google Meet, Zoom that we are using now, depending on what is convenient for the lecturer. It has not been easy because we still have the other dimension to address. That is, how do the students deal with the practical aspect of their lectures? Maybe later I will also talk about this. Part of what we did was also to challenge students. And so during the COVID period, we were able to use, teach students how to use 3D printing to deal with some of the issues like somebody already said, printing out things like a face shield and so on. Before I drop the mic, I also think I should highlight what the Nigeria Academy of Engineering is also doing. During the period, the Academy, I happen to be the Vice President of the Academy, we have a committee set up that has worked with all the deans of engineering in Nigerian universities to look at the kinds of designs that are coming out from these universities in the areas of addressing COVID issues. So we've reviewed things like face masks that people have done, face shields, ventilators, hand washing systems. And we've seen that quite a number of interventions are being made by these universities, but they need support and they need to be guided to be able to get students and faculty to address this problem. It's not just about dealing with COVID, but in the long run, we should have a system where when we have challenges in the economy, the universities should be able to come up with research and innovations that can deal with those real life problems. And that way, the professors are better trained and also the students also are better trained. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Paul, for that very interesting presentation. Just to briefly recap what we talked about the role of infrastructure in engineering development, saying that it can actually never be overemphasized. And just as Engineer Trudy has also talked about, you iterated the challenges that we have, in engineering education, talking about poor planning of the system, deficiency in the soft skills, of the students, and exposure also to industry. Those are the challenges. And then having to end up with graduates that can actually deal with, real life problems, which is a very common thing that we have, especially in Nigeria. You also gave an example of what AUST is doing, how it's transited from physical learning to virtual learning, talked about the challenges and all that. So we just want to say thank you very much for that presentation. So at this juncture, we call on Mrs. Onyeche Tifashe for our presentation. Thank you. Mrs. Onyeche Tifashe, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Really, it's a pleasure to be here. And before I start, I would like to thank the distinguished panel and my fellow panelists here who have spoken so comprehensively about this topic that I think is extremely important. And it's a timely topic as well. So thanks to APWEN and the APWEN board for putting this together. Also, congrats again to Engineer Jelade for her leadership and the achievements she's making and the strides she's making since taking up the helm. The first things I think, first I would like, coming last means that I have to either buttress the statements that were made earlier, and I agree with so much of what has been said. We are now at a crossroads in history now with COVID, and it's brought us to the realization that we as a people are responsible for our own development. There are no quick fixes, there are no answers, easy answers or solutions. So for me, when we talk about the dynamics of engineering education and as an imperative for sustainable economic development, for me, the real crux of it, I know education is key, but it's the people. It's about how do we leverage the people we have as a nation. And if we cannot leverage our people, then we always will be a net consumer. We will never innovate. We will never develop as a nation. Sad but true. And as evidenced in other countries, we will ultimately descend into chaos. So the priority really is how do we leverage our people, this 200 million plus citizens we have as a nation, and how do we start to leverage them to drive development? And from the first priority is really about the mindset change. And when you tie that into engineering, it's even about the engineering profession as a basis for economic development, as a basis for innovation and change and research development that leads to economic gain. And how do we get people, and I think in the engineering profession, first of all, as a high priority, how do we educate them? I agree with what Professor Nwalu has said about ensuring that we can create creativity, entrepreneurism, about the critical mass we have in our students, but how do we get them to start to change the way they think around solving problems? And I've taken a few notes here, but without understanding that driving a change, a mindset change in our people, creating more creativity, employability skills, entrepreneurial skills. So taking nothing and making something of it is how I like to describe entrepreneurism. Also driving their innovation skills, their lateral thinking skills, their problem solving skills. How do we start to engender that? I think that's what we're here today to discuss about. Because at this point in time, as I've said, with the advent of COVID and other challenges hitting so many nations, it's all about how do you drive innovation as a basis to resolve your society, to support societal change, to resolve the issues that mankind faces every day. And we've spoken about some of them. The challenges we're facing are with regards to healthcare infrastructure, education, it's electrification. It's all these things need engineers with the right mindset. Otherwise, what we'll continue doing is importing goods that we could produce here locally and ultimately relying on outdated technologies that add no value from a sustainability standpoint. So when we put all that together, I think we understand the changes, the key trends that are happening across the world with regards to globalization, demographic change, digitalization. We're seeing the world become a melting pot. It's much easier to connect across borders. It's much easier to trade. It's easier to travel. It's also easier now to do business from a virtual environment. And that's where digitalization comes in. It's enabling using machine learning, artificial intelligence, and other tools to be able to create solutions that can add value for humankind. So we look at, if we look at the basis where we are now as a nation, I think we're very far behind. From an education standpoint, Nigeria is ranked very low, even all the way from primary education to tertiary level education. And we need a combination of strategies to resolve this situation we're in. And that's where my fellow panelists have come in and proposed all sorts of solutions. But I think if we don't do that, then we send to a point where we continue to have gaps in electrification, in water infrastructure, in healthcare. We're relying on situations where we don't even have the right skills and capacity to develop those solutions. So I think engineering is the bedrock. It's the basis it's the foundation for innovation and thereof human development. But some of the things that we need to start looking at are how do we partner with government or pressurize government into creating the right policies and making the right investments in education. So I said, I'm drawing a thread here, and I'm saying that we as a people need a mindset change in how we solve problems. So with or without government intervention, how are we innovating? How are we creating new technologies? So I love the examples from Professor Nwalu, but we need to do more because nations have moved far ahead. I think some of what we're calling innovation in Africa or in Nigeria specifically is still so outdated. So how do we leapfrog and start to get these brains that we have? I think we have so much talent in Nigeria to start thinking more creatively and in a globally connected way. And some of that comes on with the government making the right decisions around how we enable a more innovative landscape for youth in the country. And that can come through private and public sector collaboration. In countries like Germany, Siemens is a German company. I've worked with Siemens for almost 20 years, and I've seen how the German government invests so much in vocational training. So at a point you have professional engineers, you have people who their job is to sit in an office and create ideas, but you also have people who work with those technologies and become artisans, experts in various fields. And that is the bedrock of their economy. That's the basis. So you have people who may not have gone to university, but are expert engineers, electricians, carpenters, mechanics, auto mechanics, and other fields. And because of that expertise, they're able to propose improvements, changes that are now creating that drive for innovation, that change. So I must say that we at APWEN is an organization I have a personal love for. So when I was called to speak here, even though I've had to shift this meeting into my calendar, I just had to be here. Because as women, we take serious ownership for these changes that we're speaking about, these challenges we're facing as society. I've spoken about healthcare, electrification, all these things are drawing us back. And as women, we don't take no for an answer. So as an organization, nothing stops us from pressurizing the government, collaborating with relevant industry groups and other associations out there to pressurize them to invest the right value and the right values, yes, in education, but also in the right policy, because you can incentivize private sector to take more responsibility for youth development and education. And like I said, that is the success story for many countries in Europe. It's also the success story for many countries in Asia, where it is basically private sector taking care of innovation, engineering, and therefore driving sustainable economic development. So every young student, by the time they leave secondary school, know what they want to study and how it fits into the overall country's economic agenda. The second thing I think also that we need to start looking at beyond policies, leveraging virtual networks. A lot of people in the time where COVID were down were doing a lot of online training, certifications, they were attending remote classes. Also, our institutions have to leverage these systems also for their day-to-day education. Now it's COVID, we don't know what might come tomorrow, and I'm praying nothing ever comes. I'm even praying that COVID is over as soon as possible. But this is a volatile, and the word VUCA is now, the phrase or the acronym VUCA is now very popular because we are living in volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous times. And if we're not able to understand that and start to leverage virtual networks to overcome these challenges, then we are stuck back where we are. So institutions, learning institutions, but also decision makers, partners to universities and other institutions have to start to leverage virtual platforms to not just educate their people, but also to innovate, to start to leverage R&D. R&D partnerships now, many countries are partnering remotely, not just countries, nations are partnering on an R&D basis on virtual platforms. Institutions are partnering for R&D. So you can do a lot of virtually to drive innovation in that sense and thereof create sustainable economic development. The other thing is about establishing communities of lifelong learning. So we have professions in Nigeria or industries where all the skills are obsolete. They've gone with the last, we're at the point where the new entrants into those industries don't have the right knowledge, the experience or capacity. Let's ensure that there's a culture of lifelong learning and therefore knowledge exchange between older, more experienced hands and the younger cadre of professionals that are entering industry. Those systems can be created. They're very simple. Again, you can leverage virtual platforms to create them. So lifelong learning is something I think we've missed out on. We retire our workforce and we don't leverage them, but that's an easy source. You have people who are also as frustrated as we all are with the delayed development of this nation and want to contribute. And by having formal networks for mentoring, for knowledge exchange, creating communities of learning that will attract youth to move away from idle crime and other distractions, to move more into formal networks where it may not be a professional, it may be a non-professional, more vocational experience, but then it also encourages more. So I have so many other solutions that I could propose, but I think ultimately if I summarize and I recap, it's about ensuring that we are bold, we are courageous about how we're solving problems. We're thinking outside the box, we're collaborating using virtual platforms to collaborate. We're challenging the status quo in how we come together to push the government to invest in the right ways and develop the right policies. And we're establishing platforms for cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Onyeche Tifashe, that very insightful presentation. If I can recall what you talked about how we could leverage on our people for drive developments and the power of the mind. You talked about the importance of our mindset change, which is a driver of a lot of things, which is a driver of sustainable economic development. You also talked about digitalization, which helps to create solutions that can add value, to humankind. Now, you advised that we also should pressure our government to make the right decisions. And also you talked about the need for research and development as R&D, to drive innovation. You also said that is common to every other, what every other panelist talked about is the need for, virtual learning is very important to leverage on virtual network, because as you said, we're in uncertain times, anything can happen. Today is COVID, God knows what will happen tomorrow. So it's very important for us to make a smooth transition, from physical learning, to virtual learning. Also emphasize, the need of training, giving Siemens an example. We talked about them having to have the need for expertise, so this person is a carpenter, oh, I'm good in this, that person is a mechanic, I'm good in this, so it's very important for us to also collaborate with governments, to in making of, policies. Thank you very much for that very insightful presentation. I'd like for those of us that have questions, please type your questions in the chat box. But right now we're going to, we'll take them later. But for now, we have a few questions here for our panelists. The first is, in this era of COVID-19, how can the practical aspect of engineering education be redesigned to achieve its objectives? Like Prof. Onwalu mentioned, or another person mentioned that, the challenges of having to have practicals, it's very difficult for you to have it virtually. So would like to address that, would like to have Engineer Adeze to address that particular question. Let me read it again. In this era of COVID-19, how can the practical aspects of engineering education be designed to achieve its objectives? Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I believe that, in order to figure out a solution to this, you have to think about the reason why we're in this situation in the first place. And everybody on this panel has talked about it, which is the issue of COVID-19. Right now, at least in the United States where I am, most schools have gone back to in-person learning because, like everyone has pointed out, it's very, very difficult to have practical training for engineers virtually. Some people tried it, there were limitations. They did, video calls, online learning, but you most times have students watching things or they ship kits to them and then have videos to lead them along, but it's not the same. So basically what I feel that could be done is realizing that you have to have in-person learning. We have to think about, with the constraints that COVID-19 has placed on us, what are we going to do? How will we make it safe for the students and instructors while we're giving them that knowledge? And basically one of the things that people have come up with, which here is actually like a law, you kind of have to figure out a way to use some of the constraints like social distancing, where you can have 100 students crowded in a lab doing the work, and then everybody else getting sick and the school shutting down. So you pretty much have to have smaller class sizes and probably several classes, to accommodate everybody. But the issue with that too is that now you have one instructor or one lecturer doing all that work. It's virtually impossible. So what people have done is kind of try to hire more people, but you can't really hire when you don't have any money. But you probably have to get creative with at least what most people do here by utilizing, for example, your graduate students, who for the most part are already working on projects with lecturers, and they can be a part of that solution to actually help, have students have a number of classes with, graduate students assisting them. Overall, it's very difficult, but the truth is that we can actually think it through and figure out ways that we can at least start addressing the problem, and then hopefully once we start, we can actually maybe see other solutions that will be more helpful to us. But that's my take on it.
Okay, thank you very much, Engineer Daisy. I would like Engineer Trudy also to shed more light on that issue, how the practical aspect of engineering education can be redesigned to achieve its objective.
Yeah, like I said earlier, engineering training is in our country specifically is linked to the UK who have moved on significantly, but we're still way, way, way behind. The first thing is, I think that we need to teach teachers differently. We need to break that whole culture of how we teach engineering and how we teach the practical aspects of engineering. So for example, one of the things I really enjoyed, I didn't participate in, but I watched later, was a program by a lady called Dr. Lynn Bianchi at Manchester University, where she works with 8-year-old and 8-year-old children, and she teaches what they call tinkering as a purposeful approach to engineering in primary schools. And essentially, we all know that STEM is based on curiosity, creative thinking, personal capability, all of those wonderful things. And what she says and what they do is that they start the children off early in engineering play. So that play then becomes a part of how everything is taught going forward. We have no experiences of that here in Sierra Leone. I've heard different schools. There's a school called Bertha Canton School here, where the head of the school, Dr. Brian Canton, is a PhD and is always trying to incorporate these sorts of things in it, but we've not had any success yet. But I think that's actually quite important, because the aspect of understanding that there are labs to be done, but we have to come from a place where we are now able to think creatively around these labs. And I think part of the problem that we have here is the fact that we are so used to doing things in one way, the whole culture of teaching practicals needs to change. And I mean, one thing I have been thinking about is thinking about forging relationships with other universities, which will be online, and there are challenges with that. That has already been described. But what about some of our MDAs, like the Roads Authority? So why don't we work with the Roads Authority and we get our students, rather than sit in a class and learn about it, it becomes part of what they do, you know, with the electricity board. These are conversations that we've started. We've not been able to progress, again, because of COVID, and people are worried about business as usual. But I think that these some of the ideas, if we experiment with, could possibly lead us to a different way of redesigning practical aspects of engineering education. It does not need to be at the university. It does not need to be at the lab. We can partner with industry and use what they have to teach our students. And at the same time, our students are able to come back to them at the end of the process to say, well, hang on, we know how to use this equipment because we did all our training with you. So here we are, a ready source of, a ready recruit for your workforce. So those are just a few ideas that I have.
Okay, thank you very much. Professor Onwale, this question is for you. In your opinion, how do we resolve the imbalance in engineering practice and training?
Thank you. Thank you, yeah. How do we resolve the imbalance between practice and training? This is a real problem. Start like as a pupil engineer, working under a senior engineer over a period of time, and then you now acquire that knowledge, that skill that you don't have. But now, where we are currently, we don't have that opportunity to do these things. Sometimes people are just employed and that system is no more there. So we need to find a way to bring training, that is institutions that are training, and then the industries together, like one of my colleagues already said. And of course, when we talk about the industry, we mean manufacturing industries, we mean government agencies, we mean those people who are involved in this together. So that the issue of training of students while they are in school, the practical aspect of this training must be acquired by placing them in industry. We need to revise this very seriously. In the Canadian system where I was trained, in some of the schools, they have what they call co-op programs, where industries find themselves, industries and universities attach or come together in such a way that while you are training within a university, within the period you are training, maybe during the vacations, you are attached to a particular industry and you can move from one industry to the other. And the industries are committed in this. Ask me why they are committed. The reason is government has a policy for that. And so these industries get incentives for even bringing students to their, as part of their workforce for internship or for whatever. So we need to also look at the policy, the encouragement, or if you like, whatever thing that government has to do, incentive that government has to do, whether it is in form of tax rebate or whatever, for these industries to have the incentive to be able to bring students, not just students roaming the street looking for where to go. The other thing I want to mention before I hand over back to you is one of the things we try to do, incidentally, African University of Science and Technology is one of the Africa Centers of Excellence in materials. I happen to be part of the coordination of that project. One of the things we try to do is to practice what is called the flipped classroom. We know our traditional way of teaching, the classical way of teaching, where the teacher stands in front of a class and then talks, gives his lecture, gives materials, and then asks questions, and then your ability to answer the question gives you A or B or C. The flipped classroom is where you flip the classroom and then get the students to be the ones to do the teaching, if you like. In other words, you introduce a topic by introducing a problem, and then let the students tinker with the problem, and then come up with solutions. And at the end of finding the solution, the teacher now comes in to relate that solution to the theory he should have given them at the beginning. And all this knowledge are there. Ask, like one of my friends will always say, tell the students, ask Professor Google. And Professor Nwalubete, Professor Google happened to have more knowledge than I have. And so we need to practice some of these things so that students can actually have this hands-on experience on critical thinking, looking for solutions for a problem, and then integrating that with the theory that we are teaching them as professors. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof, for that answer. I can totally relate because I'm still part of the system. Now we have a question for Mrs. Tifashe. It says, from your experience, what will you say is the bedrock of economic development?
For me, that's in fact, a very straightforward question with a straightforward answer. It's education. It is. And we all know what poor education, the impact it has had on our society. And for the older generation like us, when you think back 20, 30, 40 years ago, or decades ago as to how Nigeria has developed and where we are now, I think it's very disappointing. We're celebrating our 60th year anniversary as a country this year, and there's so much that is disappointing about what we've attained. So education drives innovation. As I said earlier, it drives creativity, drives even disruption. And I loved what Engineer Onwalu was saying about now the students teaching the teachers. And those things only come when your mind is free. And the state the country is in now, so from an economic perspective and the policy and priority perspective, the education sector has been totally ignored. And that has reflected in our economic situation as a country. So that, I think it's about unlocking that potential of the people we have and leveraging education as a tool to drive so targeted strategic development, knowing who gets trained on what so that you're impacting all sectors positively, agriculture, energy, in manufacturing, you're looking at services, trade, all those things. Even to do them at the lowest levels, you need some level of skill and knowledge. And that's my take on it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So at this juncture, we have, we're going to take some questions from people. Like I said, if you have questions, kindly type them in the chat box so that we can take them So we're going to take as many questions as we can during the frame of time that we have. So the first question here is from Engineer Kashim Ali. And then the question is actually directed to Mrs. Tifashe. It says, to solve problems, you must first identify them. Can Mrs. Tifashe help identify specific engineering curricula that are a cake?
Yes, I saw that question. So it's talking about archaic curricula. I think if you look at our first of all, doing a benchmarking of Nigeria versus other countries, there are three areas I would say maybe there that we need significant improvement. So we've made progress over the years, but there are some gaps. We need improvements, one, in how we, the kind of skills we're teaching our students. So let's move away from even core engineering. Engineers without certain skills are unemployable, or they are unable to contribute to economic development. So it's about the softer skills, the skills around how we get these the mindsets of how people do things in a disciplined and let's say specific way. So in a disciplined and measured way. So we need to start to train people on how they communicate so they're able to influence and make decisions, on how people are with money, how they handle money. So even business skills, how they write, how they perform in a job. So even how they, from the communication perspective, not so much about the oral or written, but how you react or engage with. So emotional intelligence, all those things need to be part of the curriculum so that when people come out of university, they are able to find jobs, they're attractive for the workforce. And that's where sometimes the actual learning and education and development starts. It's sometimes on the job. But as we know, many organizations are wary of hiring younger people. It might be the mindset, it might be the fact that they are not able to contribute, rather they actually devalue the business. So life skills, I think, are one core area. The second thing is that, for me, I will encompass it as digital skills. So there's big data out there. How are we leveraging this big data? And I think it's already about inserting into the curriculum, irrespective of which discipline, knowledge around big data analytics, machine learning, artificial intelligence, additive manufacturing. Those are the basics that should be a core part of every discipline. Every engineer should know how to program, how to code, how to create systems that work, how to leverage incubators or other systems to multiply their ideas. The third thing I would say is around the skills for the teachers as well. We shouldn't move away from the fact that we're talking here about students and youth, and also the way we teach our professors, lecturers in universities. There, I think the systems have to change. There has to be a more globalized way of training. There has to be education exchange. I think those things were more prevalent in the past. We need to bring them back in, where people are able to go on assignments abroad in other countries, learn how things are done differently, bring them back and adapt them for our own environment. So there needs to be much more investment and focus on also training our educators and bringing them to higher levels so they can in turn create the curricula. So I could sit here and start to tell you where the gaps are specifically, but I think in doing these three things, these are the three areas that I think there's still training our educators so they can, in essence, train the trainers, the future trainers of tomorrow, or the future practitioners. Also about the systems that we're using for training, so how to create all the subject material and so forth. Those are very critical for a paradigm shift in where we are now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I totally agree with you. There has to be a paradigm shift when it comes to training for the students and the teachers. We have another question here. The question is from Engineer Olani Olayemi. It says, how can we address the funding gaps for engineering infrastructure as a driver educational development in this era of COVID-19? I think I will call on Engineer Deze to address this.
All right. Personally, I think that what needs to be done right now is to reach out to private individuals and private companies. I mean, if it's a public university, having government intervention at some point probably help, but in the immediate for the immediate position that we're in right now, we definitely have to be more proactive about trying to get funding from people outside, people in the industry, and trying to get them involved as well. Because even here, like for example, when I did my master's program, you find situations where a student gets an opportunity to go and work for a company. It's actually being funded by that company. The professor actually reaches out to the company. Can you guys give me, money, or I need, funding because I need my students to train here. You may end up talking to 10 companies, may end up getting one. But, professors in university, lecturers in universities actually have to be marketers in a sense. They have to take the initiative to be the ones to go out there, to talk to companies. And the way the world is right now, you don't necessarily have to limit yourself to your local environment. You can reach out to pretty much anybody. Like Professor Wallace said, Google is your friend. You can find a lot of information about people, find out the kind of projects you're working on. And if it interests you and it's something that you want your students to be a part of, you can actually just reach out and write a letter. One thing I learned when I came to the United States is that it's so easy to get funding or get money if someone has it. But the problem is that we don't know to ask. It's easier actually than it was in Nigeria, where I went to my undergrad. But some people have money and they're sitting on money and they're just like, nobody asked me, so I'm just gonna put it back where it came from. So I think, institutions and professors or lecturers have to actually become marketers and go out there and try to do the work. Even the students themselves, they can actually reach out as well, because like I said, Professor Wallace, they can always go online and find information and reach out to people, and there are people that are willing to help. And with a couple of tries, you definitely get someone to do that for you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Let's take the third question. The question is from Engineer Valerie Agberaba. How can the lecturers get the industry experience needed for new system of education being proposed when the relationship between industry and academia is almost non-existent? I think I'll give an academic that. Professor Nwalu, can you please address that question?
Sorry, moderator, can you
read it
repeat
again?
The question? Sorry. Yeah.
Okay. How can the lecturers get the industry experience needed for new systems of education being proposed when the relationship between industry and academia is almost non-existent?
Okay. The simplest way to get that to happen is to do it. When I joined the African University of Science and Technology a few years back, this issue came up under the Center of Excellence project, and we were required to go on industrial attachments. It sounded funny, but not only our students, because we had this support from the World Bank, those who were in that project were all required to go on industrial attachment. So the only difference is that the funding came from somewhere. And I think that is what I think Doug was trying to say. We need to find this funding from somewhere. When we tried to implement this, it was a problem because most of the industries agreed to receive us as professors, but they weren't ready to pay. And because somebody was picking up the deal, we were able to send our students. By the way, these are mostly postgraduate students, master's, PhD, which ordinarily somebody would tell you that they're not supposed to go on industrial attachments. But I went out there. African University of Science and Technology is sitting in Abuja here. I just spent days touring all the industries in Idu industrial area. Like one of my colleagues already said, some of them, of course, couldn't open their doors for me, but I used the little networks I had with industry to be able to get the doors to open. And some of our professors, including me, spent 1 month, 2 months in industry, and then returned back to our university. So it is possible. And I think I already gave the example. It is possible if we put our minds to it. We just have to look for the money somewhere. It's either government through policy changes gives support to industries or government agencies to receive professors or these people who are teaching, or the money will be fine from somewhere, either by the industries themselves paying these professors. And I think some of the people in the oil industry are already doing this. I see Schlumberger, Shell, and so on, inviting professors on sabbatical and so on. So the answer to your question is this is doable. It only requires that everybody involved in this, we talk about the triple helix, government, industry, and academia working together. We just need to break this, I don't know if it's, is it inertia that most of my colleague professors have, especially in Nigeria, to reach out to industry. Thank God, like somebody already said, you don't have to travel. You can actually try to reach out through virtual networks. But it requires a lot of change of mindset. Like my sister, I think it was Onyeche that said that, Tifase said that we need to change our mindset. Those of us who are professors, where in most cases, we want to stay in our ivory tower. But we've heard people tell us that we must have this town going to Midtown. I'm here in Galadimawa, for example, in a part of Abuja called Galadimawa. Until we started that program, I never visited the industrial area, which is just across the airport road from our campus. But because I needed to move out, to get my students to go to these industries, to get myself and other faculty to go, I had to go physically. Many of the industries accepted, except, permit me to say, except the Chinese companies who were really not ready to receive us. But I think in the long run, even the regulatory agencies such as COREN, and I think they are doing a lot. I told you I was involved in some of the things that COREN is trying to do. Maybe we need to do a little more. I believe with the kind of big stick that COREN has, COREN can also find a way to use the big stick if he has to get these industries to really begin to partner more with universities. But on our own part, as educators, we must go out there to, first of all, tell these industries what we can do, and also to plead with them to allow us also gain the industrial experience. One of the things we are doing here is to reinforce what we call Industry Advisory Board. And again, this was a requirement under the ACE program to establish our petroleum engineering department, where the moderator is rounding up her PhD. They actually have a powerful body called the Petroleum Industry Advisory Board, where the professors and then the industry players in the field, they come together once every quarter, have a meeting, and that helps that department to get more involved with industry. And we in materials, we're also establishing what we call the Materials Industry Advisory Board. So we bring in these industries and make them members of the board. And then with that, we're able to penetrate and get our students and faculty to get the needed industrial experience that we want. Thank you.
Unmute your mic.
Sorry about that. Yes, so we have another question here. What do we give as explanation to equipment expiring in the labs while students are doing abstract learning and they graduate not knowing these equipments? Prof, please, can you just address that?
Well, there could be a number of reasons for this. My understanding of what you said is what happens. I remember once, I think I was on COREN accreditation. I don't think I reported this back to COREN. I think either COREN or NUC accreditation. We were looking at labs in different engineering departments. And then we saw some very interesting, I think these were CNC machines. And the way they were covered showed us that nobody had actually used this machine. And then we asked them why. And they said, well, because the equipment is very expensive, we don't want students to near them and so on. It's a fact, and it happens that in some universities or some polytechnics, you find situations where the equipment are there and students are not allowed to have free access to them. Of course, they have their own reasons. Part of the reason is that these equipment are expensive, and so everybody is scared of having them getting damaged by use and so on. But I think this also comes back to mindsets that one of the speakers already talked about. We need to have this mindset. These equipment are like cars. If you park them and you are not using them, they will still go bad. In any case, most of them are electronic, and so they need to be continuously used. The only thing we need to do is to have a good maintenance system, which has been lacking in most of our universities. Even when you have a good maintenance system, you also need funds, because I remember there's one equipment we have in our lab. Each time it has a problem, we have to fly in somebody from South Africa. Again, this is part of the challenge we have in the system. It's a system problem where it is impossible to find a certified technician that can handle that equipment within Abuja vicinity and even in Lagos. So this is part of the infrastructure problem I talked about before, which we need to address as a country. I think it's something that all the stakeholders we need to work on, especially those of us in the laboratories and in the university system. Once students come in, they should be trained. And once the students are trained, they should be allowed to handle the equipment. Of course, it can go bad. Of course, finally, the main thing is to ensure that we have good laboratory practices where people are trained on those equipments, they use safety measures, and then we have trained technicians who must continuously be trained. I don't know what has happened to our CPDs, continuous professional development, which needs to be done by every engineer every year. I know that it used to be a requirement for you to get your current registration updated every year. I think it's still there, but I guess part of the system problem that we have is also affecting that. So these are some of the things that need to be done. We need to train students, we need to train our technologies. We need to have a good maintenance system where we have sensitive equipment and each time they go bad, we have to look for somebody from elsewhere. That scares those who are managing the equipment, and then they end up just covering the equipment and not allowing anybody to use them. But we have to change. It has to be an attitudinal change issue.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Prof. Another question here from Orogono Precious. It says, what will a graduate do when they have so much potential, but when they approach an industry, well, I think it's supposed to be the industry to work, they hear you must have 2 to 5 years experience and all of that, partially saying no graduate jobs. Where should they then get the experience? It's confusing. I think I'm going to direct this question at Mrs. Tifashi. Mrs. Tifashi, please. Okay, I guess since she's not available, Engineer Trudy Morgan, can you please address that?
One of the things that we've done recently in Sierra Leone is we've established something called the Young Engineers Corps for that same reason. A lot of our engineers, young engineers, came to us and said, we've done our degrees, we have good grades, they're not employing us. So we took a survey of engineering firms or engineering related firms, both private and public sector, and found out that there are a couple of things at play here. Number one, they weren't confident that the degree that the students had was sufficient for them to do the work at hand. Number two, the way the students sometimes presented themselves when they went for job interviews really wasn't that great, in the sense that it's not that the students weren't great, but when you go for an interview, there's a way you have to present yourself, the way you have to present your information, the way you comport yourself. And people are looking for certain things, which sometimes in our universities here in Sierra Leone, that's not being addressed at the university level. So with the Young Engineers Corps, what we've been doing with funding from the Royal Academy is training, as I explained earlier very briefly, our young engineers in soft skills, project management, and then they do this internship with companies where a range of things are required of them in terms of how the company works, understanding the organograms, understanding the different departments and the interfaces between them, as well as the actual work itself. So they get to understand the working environment. And then with that, at the end of that, we then come back to us and we have a week-long session with them where we help them structure their interviews and most importantly, prep them for interviews. So we get panels of HR professionals and engineering employers who come and they sit on the panel and they ask them questions as they would in real life. And then they give them feedback. Well, when you came in, you said this and you did this and your approach was too aggressive. And that way they start to understand, okay, so it's not just about the fact that I'm great at engineering, I got a 2-1 or a first. When I go for work, yes, they will look at that, but they want to look at fit. And they want to know that when you come in to the company, you won't be this aggressor or this timid person when they need somebody to go out and run projects. So these are some of the things that we encourage through our program. But most importantly, what we're doing right now is we've had 3 sets of completed training. We're about to start the 4th. The lecturers at the university have said to us, well, we also want to be on this soft skills training. And I go back to a conversation by one of my colleagues earlier about training the trainers. So what we're about to embark on is a training of trainers on soft skills. So the first thing we're going to do under the Royal Academy of Engineering is actually to take them through the program, an abridged version that we do with the engineering graduates. And then hopefully with money from the government, there's a World Bank project, we will then set up a workshop where we work with these same university professors to help them incorporate soft skills training into the curriculum. So it's not this thing that you do, it becomes a part of what is done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Engineer Trudy Morgan. We're really appreciative. At this junction, we'd like to thank all our distinguished panelists for their very educative contribution. I want to believe that as many as are listening, we have really been well informed by all the things that we have heard today concerning engineering education as regards the COVID-19 era. At this point, I would like to hand over to the host to continue the program. Thank you very much.
Panelists, Engineer Trudy Morgan, the President of Sierra Leone Institution of Engineers, Engineer Professor Peter Owalu Efenese, Director of Academics, African University of Science and Technology, Mrs. Onyeche Tifashe, MD CEO Siemens Nigeria, Engineer Adaize, Senior Engineer, South Jersey Industries, United States of America. Thank you very much for making this panel session interesting, informational, and instructional. I know with the questions, there are lots of action items and call for actions for the industry, for the academia, and for the people involved. I call them the catalysts. So every engineer needs to be a catalyst to ensure that there is dynamism in engineering education so that we can have a sustainable economical development. Thank you very much. I'd like to call on our president to present certificates of code and appreciation to all our panelists. Thereafter, we'll do 1 or 2 recognition and we'll bring the event to a close. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Engineer Bossede, I really want to appreciate all the panelists for the great work that they have done. They really done justice to this. And it appears everyone is pleased to have been a part of this. At this juncture, I would like to present our honor code certificates. Just a minute. I would like to share my screen, if you don't mind. I would like to share my screen. Yeah, but it's not, I can't see it. Please come, I can't see my documents. It's only showing a whiteboard. Just a minute.
While we are waiting for the certificate presentation, I'd like to specially recognize Engineer Kashim Ali, past president of Council of Regulation of Engineers in Nigeria. Engineer Kashim Ali, FNI. We appreciate you very much for always being with APWEN. You are always showing our programs, our e-learning sessions. We appreciate them and involvement. I'd also like to recognize Engineer Dr. Otuaro Ebiere, FNSC, the Deputy Governor of Delta State. Member, thank you for being part of this program. And every participant that's taken time to be part of this panel session, listening and putting in your questions, recognize you. Tomorrow is the day 2 of this program. It will be starting with it will start with a presentation session by 9:30 a.m. Then we'll have the technical session by 12 noon. In between the technical session, we'll have the virtual exhibition. You need to watch out for our virtual exhibitions. Even though we're not having physical exhibition, there will be a virtual exhibition tomorrow. Thereafter, we would have industrial tour of Jaguar Land Rover Assembly Plant in the United Kingdom. While we're at our various locations, wherever we are, via Zoom, we'll be able to tour the assembly plant.
Thank you. Thank you, Engineer Olamoyegu, for coming to my rescue. Please, can you use the slideshow and go to the next slide? or just simply go to the next slide. Okay, this is our honor code award. The first one here goes to Engineer Onyeche Tifashe, panel discussant at the 2020 APWEN virtual conference on the topic Engineering Education in COVID-19 era. We appreciate you very much, madam. Thank you for being a part of this discussion. The next one. The next slide. For Engineer Adeze. Okay. Okay, we have one here also for Engineer Adeze. We appreciate you for coming. Thank you for participating and making this presentation. We'll send this to you in your mail. We'll also do a plaque and send to you after this time. Thank you so much for coming. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I learned that people use the raise hand icon during the panel discussion, so they intend of asking questions. But I remember the moderator said that all questions should be posted in the chat room, so she could read them out. However, we apologize for anyone that had the intention of asking a question. You can still send it across, and we will get response for you from any of the panelists who want to give response to your question. Be rest assured that you will get your response before the end of the conference. Thank you. I'd like to recognize the National Expo members that are physically here, starting with the Vice President of our association, Engineer Dr. Elizabeth Etemiko, NSC. Thank you for being here. The General Secretary of the association, Engineer Chineri Nena Igwegwe, FNSC. The Treasurer, Engineer Sylvia Kelechi, thank you very much. The Young Engineers Coordinator, Engineer Ukali, you're welcome. The Technical Secretary and the Chairman Technical Sessions of this entire conference, Engineer Dr. Imade Opokuje, you're welcome. I'd also like to recognize the chairman of APWEN Lagos chapter, Engineer Mary Afolayan. Thank you for being here physically, and every other APWEN members that are here and our guests, we appreciate you. With the approval of the president, I'd like to take one or two goodwill message from the CPC and one other past president of our association. If Engineer Kashim Ali is still online, would also like to take a goodwill message from him, and we'll close. So I'll start with the CPC chairman, Engineer Ini Usoro, FNSC. She gives a 1-minute goodwill message. We'll take one from one past president, and we'll take one also from Engineer Kashim Ali if he is still online. Thank you. Engineer Ini, please.
Yes, thank you so much. I am more just like a proud mother here in appreciation to everybody for a successful first day outing. And with my position as a past president, I can only just say that I give kudos to Engineer Funlola Ojelade for what the feats she has accomplished today. And I appeal to the younger ones to remain on board this APWEN train of ours. Together, we can and will move mountains. Thank you so much, everybody. And like we said, please stay tuned for day 2, day 3, and day 4. Thank you very much. Congrats, everybody.
Thank you very much, Engineer Ini Usuru. You have several caps, but for this conference, you are the chairman's conference planning committee.
Yes.
I'd like to call on Engineer Dr. Patricia Opene Odili, FNSC, as she gives a goodwill message.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon,
Hello,
ma'am.
can you all hear me? Okay,
Yes, we
thank
can
you
hear
very
you.
much. All right. Just want to say thank you to everybody. The panelists, you guys are just wonderful. You did a fantastic job, and that was really brilliant. I had my notebook full. I had over 2 pages, writing up everything that you had. APWEN, I cannot be more proud of you. My president, thank you so much for all of this, and thank you for the ability to pull all of these resource people from all over the world together. I am so very proud of you all. Thank you, Madam CPC Chairman, and thank you for everybody who's been part of this. I'm going to have to send my question to Prof. Back on the chat box, because I did put it earlier, and it was really for Prof to respond to, but I will send it in just like we've been told. And hopefully I should get an answer to that. Thank you all very much. God be with you.
Thank you very much. Engineer Dr. Patricia Opene Odili, she is the past president. I want to be careful to know the number, but she's one of the presidents that said the activities of this association. Yes, number 8th president of this association. We have APWEN at a glance. I believe this is spotlighted on our visuals for us to see what we would have the next day, the various technical sessions, rooms that we will have where registered members for this conference to participate during the conference, please. So you can know which of the breakout rooms you intend to join. Most of them will be taking place at the same time concurrently, including the Young Engineers Forum. Information reaching me also says that Engineer Trudy wears double cap, not just as the president of the Institution of Engineers in Sierra Leone, she's also the president of the Women Engineers in Sierra Leone. Women were ready to bring our chairs to the boardroom and create adequate space for ourselves. Thank you once again, Engineer Trudy, for coming all the way from Sierra Leone. We're getting the benefits of the digital space. I'd like to take finally Engineer Kashim Ali, FNSC, MNI, as he gives his goodwill message. Okay. Okay, so is not online. Allow me to also recognize Engineer John Oke from University of Lagos. Thank you for being here physically. We welcome you. Be rest assured that we intend to do all we can based on the vision of APWEN to encourage the Nigerian female engineer to be a catalyst for advancements in the engineering profession towards national and global technological development, to bridge the gap between the industry and the academia. We have started, we'll keep going until we achieve our results. On that note, we bring this day one to a close, and we close it with the national anthem, the first standard of the national anthem. Closing prayer, the second standard of the national anthem. O God of creation, direct our noble cause, guide our leaders right, help our use the truth to know, in love and honesty to both, and living just and truth, great lofty heights attain, to build a nation where peace and justice shall reign. Amen. Thank you very much. It's a raining day in Lagos. We pray and wish you all a refreshing rest of the day. Thank you. God bless you.